Hi everyone, today I'll show you how to create a Thanksgiving-themed scene in Blender. But don't worry, we're not actually cooking a turkey here. It's just a joke. Let's focus on creating a festive 3D design instead. I want to share a tool that always saves the day when I don't have time to brainstorm ideas. It's Leonardo AI. For example, today I needed to create a Thanksgiving-themed scene quickly. Time is tight and inspiration is running low. Leonardo AI lets me generate references in no time. I requested a festive table with a turkey, plates, a tablecloth, and other details, and here's what I got. A near-perfect guide for my Blender project. By the way, if you'd like to try this tool, check the link in the description. It can save you tons of time, especially on days like today. When you're short on time, it's best to start with the basics. For our scene, the first thing is the plate. It sets the tone for the entire composition. There you go, simple and quick. Now we can move on to the other details. Now it's time to work on the star of the show, the turkey. First, I'm starting with the simplest base, a cube. Yes, just a cube. This will be the foundation for our turkey. To make it look smooth and rounded, I'll apply a subdivision surface modifier. This turns the cube into a more organic shape, which works perfectly for the turkey's body. To keep the design symmetrical, I'll add a mirror modifier. This makes sure that anything I model on one side is automatically reflected on the other. It's a great way to save time and maintain symmetry. For the wings and legs, I'm using separate primitives. Cylinders are a great starting point for the legs, while spheres or cubes can be shaped into wings. These elements are not attached to the main body. They remain separate so I can easily reposition or resize them. To add some extra detail to the bones of the turkey legs, I used a metaball. Metaballs are perfect for creating smooth, rounded shapes that blend seamlessly. I placed a small metaball at the end of each leg to mimic the rounded cartilaginous part of the bones. With the body, wings, legs, and metaball bones in place, the turkey is starting to take shape. Next, we'll focus on texturing to give it that golden, roasted look. Let's keep going. To create the pumpkin shape, I've already applied a subdivision surface modifier to the cube from the start, which helps give it a smooth and rounded appearance right away. Next, I'll scale the cube inward to form the characteristic curves of a pumpkin. After that, I'll delete the top faces of the cube to create a more open shape and achieve a smoother transition. To add the pumpkin stem, I'll duplicate one of the faces at the top of the pumpkin and extrude it upward. This gives us a nice little stem for our pumpkin. Now, with the pumpkin shaped and the stem added, we can place it next to the turkey on the table. This adds a lovely touch to our Thanksgiving feast. Next, we'll move on to texturing both the turkey and the pumpkin to bring our scene to life. Let's keep going. Now that the pumpkin is modeled, it's time to bring it to life with some textures. To start, I added a noise texture node in the shader editor. This will create the base detail for the pumpkin's surface, giving it subtle bumps and imperfections. Next, I connected the noise texture to a color ramp node. This allows me to control the contrast and intensity of the noise, adjusting it to match the look of a realistic pumpkin surface. I made a few adjustments to the model to enhance its structure. To give the pumpkin sharper edges where necessary, I added loop cuts in strategic places. With the main pumpkin textured, it's time to apply a similar process to the stem to make it look cohesive and realistic. First, I selected the stem and applied the same texture setup I used for the pumpkin. This is easy to do by duplicating the existing material and assigning it to the stem. Next, I separated the duplicated material by clicking the Copy button in the shader editor. This creates an independent material for the stem so I can tweak it without affecting the pumpkin's texture. In the reference image, I noticed some decorative leaves placed around the turkey. Since I wasn't sure what specific type of leaves they were, I downloaded a similar illustration online to use as a reference. To model the leaves, I started with a plane and shaped it to match the leaf outline. I added loop cuts to the plane to give it the geometry needed for detailing the leaf's shape. With the reference image as a guide, I adjusted the edges and vertices until the plane resembled the general form of a leaf. Once the shape was complete, to give the leaves a more realistic appearance, I used the downloaded reference image as a texture. Here's how I did it. First, I opened the UV editing workspace in Blender. This lets me unwrap the leaves and apply the texture precisely. I selected the leaf model and used UV Project from View to quickly unwrap it based on the current viewport angle. This method works perfectly for flat objects like leaves. Next, I loaded the reference image of the leaves into the UV editor and aligned the UV map of the leaf model to match one of the leaves in the image. For the material, I created a new principled BSDF shader and connected the leaf texture to the base color input. This immediately applied the texture to the leaf model. Finally, I duplicated the textured leaf and adjusted the UV map for the second leaf to use a different part of the reference image. This variation makes the leaves look more natural when duplicated around the turkey. I duplicated the first leaf and made slight variations to create a second unique leaf. These two variations will be enough to populate the scene without looking repetitive. To arrange the leaves around the turkey, I'll use copies of these two leaf models and distribute them in a circular pattern around the turkey. This technique ensures the scene looks full and festive without requiring too much additional modeling. With the leaves placed, the scene is beginning to feel more festive and complete. To make the turkey look delicious and realistic, I created a custom texture that added detail and imperfections to its surface. Here's how I achieved it. First, I added a Voronoi texture node in the shader editor. This was used to create a subtle pattern for the turkey's surface, simulating the slight unevenness you might see on a real roasted turkey. Next, I connected the Voronoi texture to a color ramp node, adjusting the sliders to control the contrast and distribution of the pattern. I selected warm, golden brown tones for the color ramp to mimic the colors of a perfectly roasted turkey. To add imperfections to the turkey's surface, I introduced a noise texture. This added more organic randomness, enhancing the realism of the texture. For even more realism, I connected the noise texture to a bump node. I plugged the noise texture's factor output into the height input of the bump node and connected the bump output to the normal input of the principled BSDF shader. For the turkey's bones, I decided to create a unique texture that would make them stand out while keeping the overall look cohesive. I started by using a noise texture as the base, which helped introduce some organic variation. This gave the surface a subtle unevenness, making the bones feel more natural. To refine the colors, I connected the noise texture to a color ramp and added multiple stops to blend shades of off-white, light beige, and gray. The textured bones bring more character to the model, enhancing the scene's overall realism. Now that we've textured everything, it's time to bring the pumpkin into the scene. I'll start by unhiding the pumpkin model that I had previously hidden. With the pumpkin visible, I'll position it on the right side of the turkey, just like in our reference image. This placement will help create a balanced and festive composition. Once I'm happy with the pumpkin's placement and orientation, we can start adding some finishing touches to the scene. This will help enhance the overall look and make our Thanksgiving setup feel even more inviting. To create the kitchen knife, smaller knife, and fork efficiently, I started with a plane instead of a cube. This method allows for precise control over the shape right from the start. For the blade, I scaled the plane along its length and added a few loop cuts to refine the shape. By selecting the vertices at one end and adjusting their position, I formed a sharp, tapered point for the knife. For the handle, I extruded the opposite end of the plane to extend it and shaped it into a comfortable grip. A few additional loop cuts helped me add curvature and thickness for realism. Once the first knife was complete, I duplicated the plane to create the smaller knife on the left. A quick adjustment to its size and proportions made it distinct but consistent in design. For the fork, I began with the same plane structure, shaping the handle in the same way. For the prongs, I extruded and scaled sections of the plane, then added loop cuts to create the gaps between the tines. By tweaking the shape and spacing, the fork quickly came to life. Once the cutlery was finished, I turned my attention to an unexpected but charming detail from the reference image: a camera. While it might not be a traditional element of a Thanksgiving dinner setup, I loved how it added personality to the scene, so I decided to include it. To start, I used a cube as the base for the camera body. I scaled it into a rectangular shape, adjusting the dimensions to give it the classic compact camera look. Next, I added small details to make the camera feel more realistic. Using simple shapes like planes and cubes, I modeled buttons, a flash, and a viewfinder. These elements were positioned carefully on the camera body to match a traditional design. For the camera lens, I kept things straightforward by starting with a circle, not a torus. After adding the circle, I extruded it inward to create the layers of the lens housing, giving it depth and structure. The lens itself was carefully detailed. Using the extruded circle, I created concentric layers, mimicking the optical elements found in real cameras. To enhance the internal lens design, I applied a wireframe modifier which added a geometric pattern to the lens. This extra touch gave it an intricate and professional appearance. To maintain consistency in the scene, I reused materials already created for other objects. The metallic finish on the lens housing uses the same material as the knives and fork, creating a cohesive look across the table. For the body of the camera, I applied the bump-mapped plastic material used on the utensil handles. This textured finish adds a realistic touch and ties the camera visually to the other elements in the composition. By reusing these materials, the camera blends naturally into the scene while adding its own unique presence. It's a great way to save time and ensure harmony in the design. With the camera complete, I positioned it in the scene based on the reference image, ensuring it felt natural and balanced among the other objects. This step added character to the setup and tied it all together visually. To complete the scene, I added a red tablecloth, which introduced a warm, festive touch. Using Blender's cloth simulation, I draped a plane over a cube to create a realistic fabric effect. The simulation allowed the cloth to settle naturally, creating folds and contours that added depth to the scene. The vibrant red of the tablecloth contrasted beautifully with the other elements, highlighting the festive atmosphere and bringing the composition to life. These final touches polished the setup and made it feel cohesive and complete. If you enjoy what I'm creating and want to support me, consider checking out my Patreon. I'm excited to share that I'll be offering exclusive content there in the future, so it's a great way to get more behind-the-scenes access and special projects. Also, if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and leave a comment. I love hearing your feedback. Don't forget to visit my Redbubble store, where you can find unique designs featuring my work. Your support means the world to me and helps me keep creating. Thank you.